Now, there is another space station, and that goes through SpaceX. It goes through NASA. There are other stations, if you will, that correlate through the systems of certain governments. But they guarantee you that there will be a living habitual state between Mars and in this realm for the near future. And hopefully that will bring about better for a lot of people here. But to put that into term, to make that happen, you have to make steps to proact for the age that needs to be set for.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 43. Blue, how you doing?
I'm good today, Mike.
Hey, I know we're going to have a huge show today, as always. What are we going to talk about today in 43?
One of the main things we'll be discussing about is Nibiru X and Nibiru Y and the upcoming instabilities that could end up being programmed into the Matrix between 2026 in 2028. There was already a self-diagnosis of hibernation quality to mankind, but pre-hibernation quality to the higher beings with understanding of what's going on currently with the download speeds of the two systems.
Wow, it sounds like interesting stuff. I remember hearing about this years ago, but I'm sure this is new information here. So make sure you stay tuned with us, folks. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. No matter where you're watching or listening, if we're not on your favorite platform, give us a ring, let us know, and we'll make sure we get on that platform. And by the way, while you're here, go ahead and like, subscribe, and click on notifications so you're notified when we post new material. Blue, let's get right into it.
Yes. Now, what has been on an unsettled term as of since last year, I believe between September and November, had a higher activated event of the eclipse that had happened between two terms. There were 2 or 3 different types of eclipses. These eclipses had an activated point with the 2 Nibiru systems at the time. And with this that had happened, we had several military psyops events, up to and including the Force, to help rehabilitate the negative electromagnetic fields that were being prioritized around the grid last year. So thus, this put this in a hibernation mode. When these put these two systems into a hibernation mode, they can still be seen on the outskirts of the planet itself. I'm sure several other people have noticed the systems of Nibiru within the past few years, and they've been more coordinated to the conjuncture of this realm itself and the cosmic realms that surround here. When they had been put into the hibernation, the platonic events that should have been analyzed last year on a negative effect form for humanity were dislodged. So there was a lot of electromagnetic fission lines that were relocated back into term with the system itself. And more of the negative systems would be through, I believe, Nibiru X. Nibiru Y is more neutral.
Is this going to cause us to have some sort of EMP or something like that?
There could be an electromagnetic pulse frequency tone if the systems are not monitored carefully by the Foundation and other people that deal with this, because they could reactivate and cause a higher platonic electromagnetic fission line upon the whole field of the planet within those 2 terms of the years. Right now, it ain't just because of the megahertz frequencies caused by HAARP itself that are being distributed. There was a negative system that went into effect, and it included these that helped proacted this. If we can find a settling term to put into better technologies and maybe think about reevaluating electric vehicles itself into something more stable, that way we don't get that point of event where something could be knocked off. And believe it or not, there are several times within the last year and a half that electric vehicles and other electromagnetic field frequencies upon the realm were disturbed.
It is very interesting to me, but I want to jump in here and remind people, because you'd mentioned a couple things there. You'd mentioned, and we talked about an EMP and HAARP, and not everybody may know what those are, but you can go back to our previous shows. We talked about HAARP a lot, and you can just click on the little blue numbers there right next to the word HAARP on a previous show, and it'll take you right to that, and you'll see. And we've talked about it several times, so it's on several shows out there. Could you please explain to people the impact or what an EMP and what HAARP does?
Well, electromagnetic pulses can knock out electrical equipment altogether. It could knock out planes in the air. It can knock off radios. It can knock out TVs. It can knock out even microwaves, other lower substandard. It can knock out the electromagnetic fields in vehicles. It could cause a whole huge mess. And when it gets too off balance, the electromagnetic fields, it could cause the whole planet to go down. And this isn't just electromagnetically, it's physically too. We have ways we have to maintain that balance. HAARP causes problems with the electromagnetic fields, but theirs is more polarized to the weather. There are electric companies and other companies through the distribution seams that can cause problems. There are certain militaries and PSYOPs programs that can cause issues. And there are planetized and paranormal statistics that can cause issues as well. What we need to do is reevaluate our terms through SpaceX programs and other organizations, and to see what we can cooperate and maintain for the stability of the EV, maybe putting into quantum instead of electric.
The main thing that I want everyone to focus on is the governmental tie-in to HAARP. HAARP, of course, what it stands for is High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Anytime the government seems to get involved in something, it's going to be used in nefarious ways. There's going to be some sort of issue. There's going to be something about dominance and control. And the fact that these can come together in some way here with an EMP, I mean, this is just crazy stuff. So I'm glad we're talking about this. Is there anything else that I need to be aware of, or is there anything I can do between now and those next couple of years?
Well, this is more on a stat quote for PSYOPs and those on the good terms to keep our monetization codes with. These maintainment fields, they have a proactive barrier to occurs on the negative alpha stream. But a lot of the manipulations of the electromagnetic fields definitely are being evaluated through the terms of HAARP. But when it comes to other planetary realms or other frequency data streams that could have been maintained through a negative upsize or entity effect, it still can cooperate with it. And we just have to reevaluate the sciences in the terms of what we do with our technologies. Reevaluate what we could do to create a proactive barrier against things that could cause issues. And see where it can flow from there, because there are a lot of things out there, even through Neuralink sciences, that could help the substandard wavelengths of mankind. I'm not talking about Neuralink sitting and putting something in the back of your head. I'm talking about the definitions of the ultimated aerogravity, anti-gravity polarity streams that can go through indicators through vehicles and other status codes. And technologies that could maintain the ionosphere.
Is there going to be any connection with the United Federation Space Station and Mars? Is this connected to that as well?
Well, the UFSS, which goes to the space station itself, the United Federation Space Station, is a maintainment code of something in the outer cosmos on the planetary realms of Earth Terra itself that can be maintained and managed to a higher curricular scale through the new age. It's something in co-op with Mars, in co-op with the exoplanets in the near future. And when you're going into the deeper picture of things, yes, we're talking about different terrestrials as well as mankind. The elevated scenes of acceptance to moving things forward. Now there is another space station, and that goes through SpaceX. It goes through NASA. There are other stations, if you will, that correlate through the systems of certain governments. But they guarantee you that there will be a living habitual state between Mars and in this realm for the near future. And hopefully that will bring about better for a lot of people here. But to put that into term, to make that happen, you have to make steps to proact for the age that needs to be set for. Current administration doesn't have that evaluation set up right. Their terms go on a directive line backwards. It's why they got to nitpick and point fingers at certain other people. Between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, we don't need that. You don't point fingers at people who have a much more knowledgeable understanding and motivation to move things forward. And with their term, they have that right. You knock Donald Trump off, you're going to knock off Space Force. Fortune turns, knocks off the whole pre-eliminatory skills of the military, those that co-op and help mankind. This is really something to think about when it goes deep down into this picture.
We've talked about it before, the victors write history, but you got to understand we are living in historic times here. In the future, there's going to be a lot, and hopefully it's the truth, but there will be mention of Trump. There will be mention of Musk and Tesla and SpaceX and all the stuff that he's contributed. People are going to be fascinated by these individuals in our moment in history here. What are we going to talk about next, Blue?
Well, the other thing dealing with Mars is the Arctec portals. There are distribution scenes that Arctec portals can help analyze, bringing in anti-aerogravity star pod units or starships in and out of the dimensions through these ports. These ports itself will help stabilize motivating between Mars and automatically between that and Earth. So you're dealing with time portal activation scenes instead of having to go in and out of the planet itself. That link-up processing code will happen, but that may take several years. The first step would be getting mankind to there around 2035 when they actually start setting something in. They're going to put at least several people in take zone and see where that perimeter goes. Now, Martians have an underscore effect. We talked about these species before. Co-op turns underneath. Co-op turns for them underneath, but co-op turns for humankind up above. There are species that actually live on that planetized realm, that they're within, if you will. Robotech and androids and Tesla bots too. As long as we can applicate good AI into the scene and program it, similar to what they would have for those androids, like in Star Wars, R2-D2, a few other ones, those that would cooperate with the affiliation modes of mankind, and maybe move a Tesla bot further. But remembering we have to equalize forces of life with the substandards of the technologies to come. The definition will co-create and reanimate better for all in the end.
I don't want anybody to gloss over what you had said there, so I'm going to get right to the meat of it. You're maintaining that there is and will be life on Mars.
Yes, between what Elon Musk and others at SpaceX do priority sphere and organizations that deal with space terms, exactly as it is and as it will be. If you look through the star units and replicating scenes, pay attention to X platform and other similar platforms. The details they put out there, they're already spreading for mankind to be aware of. But in order for this to happen, we cannot have emulating evil upon the grid. We have to maintain our code of ethics and start putting in good laws with each other instead of laws that would work against each other.
Wow. We are living in times that I hope I'm old enough to look back or tell my great grandchildren or what have you. I've often also thought about doing a separate podcast called The Truth or Letters to My Great Grandchildren or something, because I want them to know and I want them to hear it from their own ancestor what actually happened during these historic times. I think that's real important, especially with fake news, the internet, deep fakes and AI and all sorts of stuff. Are we ready to move on to the SCP Foundation?
4040, Sloth bit. We're talking about Jackson Sloth and his family in 1887 ventured into the Northwest frontier and attempts to compete with his former colleague and friend within Siskin for lumber, I believe, and in New Toronto, and they encouraged the effect. But what happened at the time had elevated into a nexus in paranormal elevation code. His disappearance ended up into a 100-foot sinkhole at the time. So the collective force that happened and concerning the surrounding woods at the areas that he was in to dealing with lumber had opened up a sort of nexus portal. Now, the properties that dealt with this, as well as the properties in the town itself, had escalated into a paranormal psychological effect. And this type of psychological effect, depending on the memories of others and where his occupation is going into, could fundamentally cause others to sink into the foundation of the Nexus itself. So the ultimatum is, as sus with this, it would be considered a Keter. And Keter in the SCP Foundation is something on a really negative alpha string. Maybe it's really dangerous. The sinkhole is greatly widespread, but there are paradox strings that could actually teleport into the definition point, cause others to remanually put themselves into a negative alpha string on its own. In the consideration, they do monitor the area, and if anyone gets close, I'm pretty sure they keep it disclosed from further evaluation terms from the public.
You know, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about a thing that we have here in northern central Florida in the Alachua, Gainesville area called Devil's Den. It's like a naturally occurring phenomenon. They've built steps so you can walk down, and there's a waterway, and you can dive. It's crazy, folks. If you've never seen it, go ahead and check it out online somewhere. Devil's Den. Do you think it's something similar to that? Is this being made a tourist attraction? Are people in the surrounding areas making money, or is it so secure and so contained and protected no one can get near it?
Around the actual Nexus itself, the pit itself, because it's so deep and so wide, and they have tried through several terms just going into it and seeing what's in there. And because it creates paranormal evaluation terms upon others and psychological effects, just the closer it is, there's a certain area that they guard around. They don't allow. So around that perimeter, it's kept away from the public. But I'm not saying this right now. The town itself and other areas that are in there, that's still open. It's still public. When it gets closer to where that nexus is, I guarantee you, just like any other paradoxal pit, any other shifting platform, they maintain monitorization for those zones. someone could fall through, they could never come back up. They have caused electromagnetic field disturbances in these pits too. So even when they try to proactively pull in to determine with that, they get issues.
This is every time we talk about SCP stuff, I picture a movie. For some reason, I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, wow, this would be a great movie. Somebody ought to make a movie out of this. So if we give you the idea to make a movie out of this, folks, just mention our name in the credits. Just spell our name right. That's all we care about. What else from the SCP, Blue?
A 4074, the sunflower. There is articulated Agarthan fabricated dimensional realm flower. This isn't a regular flower. This creates a certain bulb that turns into a type of nebula. And when I talk about nebula, I'm talking about something cosmic and something that has a high interdimensional energy doxis stream. When it creates this nebula, the bulb, it falls off after a certain time. But because it has so much amount of certain bioelementals and luminescent order streams, and it's not on a term with Earth itself, so it does have an energy that's different. The energy is more closer to the solar energies of the sun than it is for anything else, but not the current sun. There are several suns out there, and this one goes more into, I believe, a red. One more of the dwarf sun stars, the Hathor receptacles. There are fragments that can be dislodged into that and recalibrated into the terms of other things in bioluminescence and maintaining objects, the solar interface. I'm not far out there because if you think about the scientists nowadays and glowfish and certain other types of bioluminescent agents that they are already articulated with animals and certain other objects. I'm sure plants too, they're probably going to make. But I guarantee you, look up glowfish. That's created. They have similar properties like that, some types of stabilities of an ion effect through the fields here. And if scientists learn how to create these fields and utilize them, it can help distribute in easier, more photonic way to maintaining the energy itself. It's considered a safe product, but it is monitored and it is kept in a room at a facility.
That was going to be my next question, because down the street from me, there's a beautiful place. There's farms, there's farmlands, and they grow rotational crops. And on most of it now, it's strawberries. They're getting ready to harvest the strawberries here in late January, early February. But there's a farm right next to it and right in the middle of it. They grow cucumbers and corn, and these are things that go to name brand products all over the world. I'm quite familiar. I've taken a tour of the place and everything. It's pretty cool. They have a corn maze sometimes set up there. They've had a thing of sunflowers, and they rotationally put in the sunflowers because people like to take pictures of sunflowers with sunflowers, their family photos, whatever, and that's how they make money. And I'm thinking, wow, they can be open at night now and do the same thing. Is it possible to think that this sunflower could survive outside this containment, and if it was leaked or what have you, that this could be a global thing, that this might be a thing that would spread fast or something?
Right. Now, yes, it could very well be utilized and spread outwards, but until they learn with the containment mode of motivating what it is for the energy and mixing streams itself with this, it probably most likely won't. But there are similar specimens out there in the world. And if you did happen to come across one, I'm sure government will probably end up snatching it away from you in an instant. But they're very rare. They come through an interdimensional realm of like Earth itself. And they were data analyzed through certain receptacleized beings. Scientists, if you will, but I don't think those scientists were human. There are several other intaking zones that create objects, polarity scores, animals, even scenes of effect for nature itself on a higher term.
What's this next one we're going to talk about? Birds of a feather. I've often used that phrase, but I didn't know it was a thing.
4075, yes, flamingos. There is a colony located in an abandoned office block designated in Lima, Peru. There are certain species of avians that still have a lodging form of a higher reticularized and analyzed order from which they came from, of the ancients of old, of the council. These are one of them. They want to put it as a Keter type of a mainframe because they don't know what they're up to. They carry, what happens is they teleport between the modulation zone of this office itself and move to other distribution scenes throughout the realm and or realms and come back. And humans have tried their best to find out what they're up to, but without fail, they cannot. If these beings do not pose a threat and they are maintained on their own higher order, they have their reasons. I guarantee you this, they run through one of them ancient avian lineage codes. The bipedal races that were functioned throughout several other dimensions, several other intaking zones before certain negative beings have pushed them out of into existence here, mainly. The Alpha Centauras. But we're getting off subject here regardless. These, they co-op, they work, they get their information, they self-analyze, they can't communicate into a human standard tone. They have human language interface, I believe. And they also have a much higher intellect than other avians. But we had talked about this before, but between cat, dog, and bird species, certain beings out of those species are going to be different. They have a higher dimensional intact zone because of that.
You know, for some reason, the first thing I think of when I hear you talking is, oh crap, I live in the South. I live in Florida, and we have flamingos, and maybe one of these flamingos is part of this. Are they all contained?
There's only a small group of them, of those type of species that actually have an order like they do. And it's more of a humanized, well, it's not human. Think of more of a human's order, but non-human's order. Like they got their own trajectory code for where they're moving things forward on. Well, it's only because they ran through the ancient lineage of certain species. Maybe evaluate them better, learn from what they can reciprocate with them, the foundation, and see where that term goes. See where, if they have correlation codes that deal with the inner worlds. Because there are a lot of co-op species through the inner worlds that humans are not aware of yet, that still go in and out of this realm. And some of them are spotted, like dragons, unicorns. We have higher dimensionals, elves, if you will, mountain dwarf. People have seen these species. They go in between the two perimeter effects.
Wow. That's fascinating stuff. I don't want time to get away from us here. We are starting to run low on time. Are we ready to talk about the Space Force and the Federation?
Yes. Going back into terms of 2020. Remember how they had posted out there that former Israel Space Security Chief says, and I quote, that extraterrestrials exist. It's funny how we're going through the terms of events right now and dealing with Israel and Hamas. You know, they point that out were several years ago. What's interesting is they say that, and they know Trump knows about it. They know he knows that extraterrestrials exist, and this guy deals with the space security. Now, Donald Trump deals with the good activated portals of event, not the negative. And if we're going to go on to the other terminology, this is where it's going to stand. The current administration is trying their best to downsize him now. Just recently putting out fake profiling speeds about Epstein's Island and Donald Trump. Pictures that he was several years ago, supposedly, with young girls. Number one, that was several years ago. Number two, where the hell did he even get that out there and just provide it all of a sudden? This stuff can be re-edited. Donald Trump is and would not be a child abuser. He would not be a person who would screw with people like that. For them to go this low for several years ago for something that isn't even entirely true in any wavelength, and to have them doing what they're doing currently is already providing proof to the current administration and Joseph Biden that they don't have the authorization codes to move things forward. Because recently, with the border and the U.S. and Mexico razor wires, they decided to have removed. They cut it, snip, snip. And now they're having these other issues, and Biden's trying to cover it up with saying, okay, we'll just add people here and there and add more and more to the border to watch over it. If you did that, then why is your administration snipping down borders and allowing? You screwed up. Number two, George Soros. He fundamentally passed a plan with Biden, a $20 million plan, Open Society Foundation. Millions. This guy's dealing with human trafficking. He's dealing with drug cartels. He works in cooperation with the Soros family with them in the administration. Look up your homework, people. We have a lot of certain governments and military on our end had to deal with this negative stance from them. This is going to stop.
The crazy thing to me, and just to dovetail on what you've been talking about, is it seems to always be through projection. Like, in other words, they always put it out there and put it on someone else that, oh, you're doing this. And then a couple years later, we find out, no, that person wasn't doing that. You were doing that. So, I mean, is that what you see and find as well?
Yeah, they're just nitpicking between each other. And it's got to stop. The little fights are not going to help the wavelength to motivating the planet forward. Instead of fighting about what each other's doing wrong, we need to maintain what the whole entire realm needs to do right.
Valid points. Excellent point there. And I think that's where we should put a period on that. Hey, let's talk about ET of the week.
Yes, the Zeta Reticuli Gray, hyperdimensional, ancient council of 9, but now is 5 because of certain negative races. And people, before I get into explaining about these beings, not all grays are bad. There are certain species like these that run on good wavelengths or neutral wavelengths. These run on good because they run through the foundations of the ancient council of life itself. Programming closest to human genesis and Adari mixed avatar codes. So through the DNA that reciprocates through these beings and the Adari grays, which can reciprocate between male and female to a certain extent, have DNA infrastructure events between them and human itself. That's why humans have an extra data analysis stream of a psyoptic event through them. A good bystanding occupants who manage realms and bring better advancements through technologies and upper streams of events. Protection awareness amongst through co-op through certain government and military itself. Working alongside Ladies, Nordic, Anunnaki, and the Talos and Taros societies.
You know, one of the things I've learned recently was doing my own ancestry, trying to find out where I'm from. And if I'm not mistaken, your extraterrestrial lineage is from Zeta Reticuli. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Very interesting. Interesting stuff. And again, to be clear, Zeta Reticuli, good guys here to help.
Good, but we're a dying race because of the stupidity that is being malfunctioned upon this planet from certain beings. And humans are going to end up being that way too if they cannot find the distribution codes right. Protectors, and there are several others through the Federation, and those that are searchy generators, and those that run through our avatars that co-op with mankind and the foundations of life.
And that's it. Just like that, folks, we are out of time. Time flies when you're having fun. Great stuff today, as always, Blue. Episode 43 in the books.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, we'll see everybody next time.